What's up, everybody? Welcome to PPR podcast number 188. This will be the Week 6 preview and Week 5 recap show. As always, I'm Chase Izidoro, and as always, I'm joined by Maddy Worley. Maddy, another good week of games?
Yeah, another big week we had in Week 5. One of the biggest games was probably one of the most anticipated matchups that we'll see all year between two of some of the top-ranked teams, San Marcos and Mission Hills, the Discovery Bowl. It was a great pick for the game of the week. Ultimately, Mission Hills ended up with the win. It was a packed atmosphere. There was a lot that happened in that game.
Yeah, Discovery Bowl is always fun because it is basically the Battle of San Marcos. So it's always a great atmosphere no matter how good one team is compared to the other. But with both the teams what they are at this point in the season, we kind of knew it was going to be a great game. You know, Brady Pohl got off to a great start with a touchdown. San Marcos was actually up 14-7 in this game. You know, Elijah Betchel had the big touchdown run on what looked like be an RPO or a bubble screen. You know, he took it to the house and looked like San Marcos was controlling it. Then Mission Hills, as they always do, dominating in the run game, was able to kind of break down San Marcos in that aspect. Giovanni Hart having a huge game. We kind of thought he would, especially with the size of Mission Hills as well. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately coming down to a game-winning field goal by Logan Boyack. You know, that's a great way to send off a win. And also, you know, I got to shout out the defense. Anthony Chavez, fourth down stop to be able to go on and get that game-winning field goal. Just a huge moment. You know, I still do trust in I want to trust in my guy, so I understand going forward on fourth and short there. And, you know, it just didn't go San Marcos' way. Huge stop by Mission Hills. We know their defense has always been kind of what we look for when we watch this team. But really, we are starting to see now, before we get into league, because once we get into league, we're going to get a lot more of these matchups. But now we're starting to see these top teams start to play against each other. And this was kind of one of the first tastes of the season that we get to see. And really, it's good to know that, like, they are a lot closer to each other and they can play with each other. So a little bit of a shakeup in the top 9. We'll get into that a little bit later. But, you know, as of right now, it's really good to see that the competition is not that far ahead. You know, I think the last thing we wanted to see was to, see Mission Hills or San Marcos go out there and just blow the other one out of the water, because then it's oh man, some teams are better than the other. But it really does seem like the talent in this town is very close to each other once you get to these top schools.
I definitely agree with you on that. This was sort of the first game where I noticed some big shakeups in the rankings that we've had, because we knew both of these teams they've been great teams consistently all year, and I was really looking forward to watching them face off against each other, and it did not disappoint for me.
Yeah, same. You know, I thought San Marcos would be able to pull it off, and I still believe in their offensive firepower that they have. They are stacked across the board, and they have a really good defense as well. But, you know, it's hard to break down. Mission Hills is good at taking the air out of the ball and just running it down, and, you know, that's tough to stop once they get it rolling, and the Grizzlies come out on top again.
Yes, they did. It was a great game. There was some other big action at a school that's maybe not talked about as much, but we got to shout out Brody Stump from Kearney. He had 9 passing touchdowns this week in their game against O'Farrell. You
know, it doesn't make it on the PPR because, you know, we decided not to go for the O'Farrell and Kearney one, but ultimately we got to shout him out. Brody Stump is a really, really good quarterback. You know, at the lower divisions, sure, but still, even last season, 32 touchdowns, only 7 picks, 3,000 yards passing, another 400 on the ground with 6 touchdowns. He's off to a great start again this season. But anytime you throw 9 touchdowns in a game, it's impressive, and it has to be shouted out. He's a really good quarterback, slept on a lot. You know, I think when I look at these teams that are in the lower divisions, the ones I look at the most is definitely Kearney and Hoover, because they have that offensive firepower to go put up a lot of points. We saw it last year, great game. I think we're going to get to see another one. I believe they're in 2 weeks. We'll get that game, so it'll be a really good one. Yeah, can't wait for that. But shouts out to him, 9 touchdowns. I believe it's second in San Diego CIF section history. So just an amazing moment. Good on Brody.
Yeah, I love to see him etching his name into that record book.
Right? That is something else standing the test of time. You know, yes. Like, oh, you remember that one time I put up 9 touchdowns? You know, it's a good moment to look back on.
Not too many people can say that about their high school career.
Yeah, he gets to have now the Al Bundy is like, I once scored 9 touchdowns in a single game. You know, it's a great moment. But I think we got to get into the top 9 now. A little bit of a shakeup. Obviously, some teams on some buys. But you know, how do you have your top 9 now as we head into this week 6?
So right now, I still have Lincoln at 1. I don't want to punish them by moving them down just because they had a bye week.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they did anything wrong at all. In second, I have Cathedral. They're coming off of a decisive victory over Helix, 28-0 in week 5. Just showed off the talent that they have, really, in my opinion. And then moving up, I have LCC at 3. They're 5-0. To me, that record helps you move up the rankings a little bit. I'm not sure how long they'll stay there, but I'm impressed by that. And then at 4, I have Granite Hills. They also had a bye week, kind of just leaving them. They deserve to be in the mix, so leaving them there. At 5, I have Mission Hills. They moved up after this win in the Discovery Bowl that we just mentioned. 6, I have Carlsbad, another team with a huge victory in week 5, 41-0 to shut out Ramona. And then 7, Mount Miguel, they're 4-0 right now. I have San Marcos at 8. I do believe they belong in the top 9.
Absolutely.
But not quite sure they're in that number 4 spot anymore. And then I have El Camino, a team I'm not sure we've mentioned just enough this year, but they're one of the best programs in the county.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good top 9. I think for the 9th spot right now, there's a lot of teams, and we've seen that shuffle. Like I've had La Jolla there, then I had Rancho Bernardo there. I have another new team there as well. It's not El Camino, though I know El Camino could be that spot. But for me, Lincoln number 1. At this point, Lincoln lost to J. Sarah. They lost to Arborview at the beginning of the year. The Arborview one could easily have been a win. The J. Sarah one, I don't think anybody's going to blame them for. And to be quite honest, I'm actually giving them props for hanging with them. So for me, Lincoln's number 1 until I see them lose again. I believe they have another big Los Alamitos game. That's kind of be another situation where it's like, if it's close, I'll probably still keep them there. But Cathedral number 2, I think, is solidly at number 2. I think they're the only ones really. I won't say the only ones. I think Granite Hills has something to say about still being the number 1. Because 1, they won it last year. They're coming out. They're still great this year. But I do think that right now I have Lincoln, Cathedral, Granite Hills as my number 3 now. They've been phenomenal. They're still on track. They have a great run game. They're great with Zach Benitez throwing the ball as well. Good defense. Number 4, I have La Costa Canyon. They've been high flying. I don't know still if I could put them higher than a Cathedral, a Granite, or a Lincoln, even though they are 5-0. They do have a great win over San Clemente. But until we get into the Avocado League games, it's going to be hard for me to move them any higher. Still, you got, if you're going to run up the score, it shows how great you are as a team. And I think they are going to be able to compete, and that's why I have them number 4. Right now I have actually Carlsbad at number 5. I've been impressed by the Lancers. I think we slept on them a little too much at the beginning, and that's probably has a lot to do with Julian Sane leaving, and plus a lot of other guys from that big class. But they're still just as good. They're still in a great situation, a great team, a great program. I think the Carlsbad Lancers are number 5, which is a shame because I feel bad for not putting Mission Hills higher because they did get the win over San Marcos, and I had San Marcos so high, and also they hung right in there with Granite Hills as well. I have Mission Hills at number 6 right now. They could easily be much higher than that. They know how to control their game, and they also have a great quarterback to go along with that. That can beat just about anybody in town if you really put it up against it. So Mission Hills is a viable team. I think that top 6, and I'll honestly say top 7 because I have San Marcos right now as the 7th. Close loss to Mission Hills. Probably could have been a stamp of approval if they had gotten the win. But a close loss, I don't think I'd drop them much further than that. Feels wrong as well to put then Mount Miguel number 8 because 2 big tests that I said, let's see how they do after these big tests, and they passed with flying colors against La Jolla Country Day and Bishops. Bishops being the big one, being the one that was, got away from them last year. We're going to find out about Mount Miguel really quickly once it gets into league play, and honestly, they're going to have a really good league play. This is a really, really good team. I know I got them sitting at 8, and I'm sure almost all of them there are like, why are we sitting at 8? That's where I have them right now. Maybe it's because of the program over the past, like the Carlsbads, the Mission Hills I'm maybe leaning towards them more because I've seen them in the past. But, until then, I think I have Mount Miguel at 8. At number 9, breaking in, I have University City. I have the Centurions. They have a high-powered offense. I know the competition they played against hasn't necessarily been the big hitters. I understand that. But this offense can go toe-to-toe with a lot of the teams in the county. we're going to find out about them. They have some big games coming up, especially in league play. It's going to be interesting to see how they play in those games. But I think they can go toe-to-toe with the likes of the La Joyas and the Scripps Ranches. Scripps Ranch also a team that's probably vying for a 9 spot in the top 9. Also, I think a team we could consider as well would also be Steel Canyon. And, these are all teams that are going to be playing against each other. Steel Canyon with Mount Miguel. Granite Hills will be in there. League play this year is going to be awesome. I think the leagues are pretty close to being perfectly balanced. I know some teams aren't playing to what they've played in the past, but still, there's going to be really, really good league play this year. I can't wait for that to start. I know we're getting closer to it. But as of right now, that's my top 9. 2-2 Lincoln, then 4-1 Cathedral, 3-1 Granite, 5-0 La Costa Canyon, 4-1 Carlsbad, 4-1 Mission Hills, 4-1 San Marcos, 4-0 Mount Miguel, and 4-0 University City. It's a lot of 4-0s and 4-1s and 5-0s, so I know it's all going to shake up a little bit later down the season, but as of now, that's my 9, and we're going to have some big games this week coming up that'll probably shake it up again. Who are we starting off with for Game of the Week?
Game of the Week, we go up to Oceanside with El Camino, my new number 9, facing the Oceanside Pirates. It's fun to see them, the same area. It's similar to the Discovery Bowl.
One of the best rivalries in San Diego, bar none, is this Oceanside one.
So we know that's going to be a big game, part of the reason why it is the Game of the Week. El Camino is coming off a win over Mount Carmel, 22-9. They looked pretty strong. Oceanside is also coming off of a big win over Escondido, 49-12.
The one that stands out to me, Mount Carmel obviously was a good win for El Camino, but the one over Escondido, I know Escondido's not had the greatest years in the past, but they did get off to a hot start this year. And we still are kind of figuring it out with this Oceanside team because they've been in a rebuild themselves over these past 2 years. But that was a big win. 49-12 kind of shows us that they are a team that is capable of playing with some pretty good competition. El Camino, Leo Bell, 397 yards, 7 touchdowns through 4 games. Really great on the ground. But also Oceanside as well. Joseph Vinup at quarterback, 586 yards, 6 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Add another 300 yards on the ground. But also look out for this new freshman, Exodus Taele, and I hope I'm saying that right. 100 yards rushing last game and a touchdown. Good to see that from a freshman. Yeah. They also have some other good guys that have added to this rush game as well for Oceanside. We've seen this rivalry and really the standing of the programs in Oceanside change over probably the past decade, right? It's gone towards El Camino, away from Oceanside, who had been so dominant for so many years. I know Oceanside wants to get back to being the team out there, even if El Camino is still capable of getting all of this talent. They want to rebuild to what they can be. Do I think they have a chance in this one? Absolutely. But I do also know that when you are trying to fight back up to what you were, punching up to a team like El Camino might be just a little bit too much, especially in the trenches. But I do think Oceanside has what is capable of getting it done. It'd be interesting to see if they pulled it off. It's at home, which helps.
Yes.
I know the whole town's going to be out there for that one. I think you have to go into this one going, all right, expect El Camino to win. But also, I wouldn't shock me if Oceanside put up the upset. It really wouldn't. I like everything they're doing over there, and that quarterback has been great for them.
Yeah, I think the worst thing El Camino could do is say, oh, we've taken the last 4 of these easy, we're going to do it again. Because I don't think you can go into this with the mindset of easy win for El Camino. Oceanside is definitely going to make them work for it.
And that's the beauty of a rivalry game too, is once you go in there, it doesn't matter if they're 0-7, you want to hang up 50 on them. It's like, so I think everybody's going to be ready to play on this one. Just, it's great that we've been able to have these in the earlier weeks so that we can have these games scheduled like this so we can really give them the love they deserve of a game of the week. Because once we start getting into league play later down the line, if you have a big rivalry, like the one I think of always is the Rotary Bowl between Mount Carmel and Rancho Bernardo. That's one of the more fun games to go to in this county. Everyone comes out, both sidelines are packed,
Huge.
And it's always the same week as the Holy Bowl, so it just slides underneath the rug, and nobody ever gets. It doesn't get the love of the game of the week status that it should. So it's good to see that a good rivalry, an in-town rivalry like this, and obviously the Discovery Bowl, get that kind of love.
Yeah, it's fun to have these rivalry games back to back. But now we've got to move to the city. We've got the Granite Hills Eagles at the Madison Warhawks. Both of them are coming off bye weeks. It's interesting because Granite is 3-1, Madison's 1-3. They seem to be in a little bit of a rebuilding year, but historically these are two teams we enjoy seeing match up.
Yeah, I think this one's a little bit too much for the Warhawks. I know they're still very talented, but I think Granite is more across the board talented. And really, Granite, not that Madison doesn't know what they want to do, but they are still figuring it out because the success hasn't come immediately to start the season, where Granite's rolling. You know, the one team they lost to was in the Honor Bowl in Perry, Arizona, you know, which is a really, really good team. Outside of that, they've handled just about everybody they've played against. You know, I fully believe in Granite to get this done. Both teams coming off a bye, so there does give a chance for Madison to get a little bit of an adjustment. You know, I know they just played against Helix, and it was a heartbreaking loss, losing on the game-winning field goal, so they'll try to, you know, right the ship. This is probably not the team to right the ship against, is the Granite Hills Eagles. Still phenomenal from last season and really vying for the top spot in the top 9 with Cathedral and Lincoln. I think it's just a little bit much for the Warhawks, and I feel like the Eagles are going to keep on rolling.
Exactly. The Eagles are very strong, clearly open division champions. It's going to be fun to see them out there. I like seeing these two play against each other, but it might be a lot for the Warhawks this year.
And you know, that's the thing when it comes to these big programs. It's like even when they do have a down year, there's still a lot of good coaches there and a lot of good kids there. So there's potential that on any Friday night they could show up and then you find yourself in the third quarter 10-10. And it's like, oh, what's going on here? We're in the game. So there is still that potential. I just do think that Granite Hills, you know, a lot of the guys that are there are still from that past game. I know they lost a lot of guys on defense, but I think Granite's going to win this game, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but Granite will likely come out on top. We've got to move to the South Bay. We've got Christian High visiting Chula Vista.
Your Christian High.
My Christian High. Oh, Christian High. We've got the Spartans. Last week, they actually shut out Olympian 35-0. A pretty big victory for them. They looked great. Gabriel Ruiz had 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They're showing to be a pretty strong team down in the South Bay this year.
Yeah, I think Chula's making their way to becoming the best team in the South Bay. I know Modern Day has something to say about that. I know that a CIF champion in Sweetwater certainly has something to say about that with the rivalry there. But I do think Chula is on the rise. You know, we talk about Elijah Gillespie a lot. We talk about Isaac Baca a lot, and they're great. But do not sleep on Ladarian Perkins. He's a great running back as well for them. 458 yards, 7 touchdowns through this point in the season. They're 4-1. This is a test, though, because Christian is one of those teams that is like they play big, you know, and that's what stood out to me when they played against Mission Bay as well. Jacob Marones, really good running back, and they have a good enough O-line to where he's effective. If that can slow down Chula, you could be looking at a game here where it's really close going into the 3rd and 4th quarter. You know, I would lean on Chula because we've seen them pull it off, and they've had great season last year, and they're off to a great season again this year. But do not be surprised if Christian makes this a very difficult game to where it's just running the ball, run the ball, run the ball. They get into the end zone, and then now it's like, okay, now we're chasing by a touchdown, and they just do it again. You know, I think Christian can hang with Chula Vista from that respect. Brady Eads, also a really good player.
Yes.
You know, he's probably the star player in this game. So I expect a good one from the South Bay.
Yeah, and there's actually some other news for the Patriots coming off their bye week. They have a sophomore quarterback, Caleb Runkle. He came from Granite to CHS. He's eligible to play this week.
Oh,
so that's going to shake some things up on the offense. So Chula Vista is going to have to work, but so are the Patriots. It's going to be a great game down in the South Bay.
I think so. And then we go to the North County game of the week. 4-0 University City at 2-3 Westview. You know, when I look at University City, obviously they're in my top 9 now. And it's hard to judge because they haven't really been in a close game, or at least someone who's been up to their task. But they have a high-powered offense. You know, my long shot to start the season, or long shot, but surprise pick that I wouldn't be surprised if they made the podium, was Drayden Gardner. He's off to an incredible start. I mean, 506 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns in just 4 games. Obviously, Tay Lockett, Xavier Quintanar, you know, Quentin DeMar throwing the ball as well. They like to throw it a lot, and when you have those types of guys out there, it makes it so much easier to throw too. Westview, what stood out for me from them was this defensive player, Mateo Brezenden. I interviewed him. I know, and he told me his last name at the Dine and Dash. That kid's a beast. Like, there's some kids that fly under the radar because they don't make the highlights. So you have to go into the raw videos, you got to watch it all, and you're like, you got to study the tape. I know everybody when they're playing Westview is marking down, watch out for number 3 on defense. He's incredible on the defensive line, 31 total tackles as a D lineman, 8 sacks in just 5 games. He is a wrecking ball on the defensive line, and he can cause problems. Now, I don't think, like, if UC puts up 2 touchdowns, I think it's going to be a really big problem for Westview. You know, Westview has to make this like the ugliest game possible as they possibly can. So it's a big task on the Westview defense. We know they've given up some points in the last previous weeks. Obviously, a big win against Vista to hold them to, I believe, only 1 touchdown. Yep. So it's going to be tough for Westview in this game. It really is for the Wolverines, because I think UC can put up some points pretty quickly, and I don't necessarily think Westview can do that. So they just got to make it as ugly as possible. They're on home field, so we'll see if they can. But you know, that's really the recipe for success, is make it ugly for Westview.
Yeah, UC. I was just looking at their stats, and the list of talent and ability on that team runs very deep. It goes on and on. Oh, this guy has 3 touchdowns. This guy has 4. They're pretty unlimited in what they can do there. But like you said, if Westview can sort of stop their momentum and that defense can run strong, it could make for a pretty interesting game.
Yeah, Westview's got to basically get it to 3rd down every time and then not get off the field. They got to make it 3rd down and then get that first, and just make it to where the clock is running constantly, because if they limit the amount of times that UC offense is out there, then they have a shot. But if UC goes out there and puts up 14 in the first quarter, it might be a wrap pretty quickly.
Yeah. But we've got to move out east. We've got Point Loma visiting Steel Canyon. Steel Canyon is a team I'm happy we get to talk about today, because I think they've been quietly cooking some things up. They're coming off a big 45-14 win in last week's East County Game of the Week at Valhalla, and their offense is just looking very strong this season.
Yeah, I agree. Gavin Kacha, 987 yards, 12 touchdowns, only 1 pick. John Weaver, the 4th on the ground as well, 588 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, that's in line with some of the best stats that we've seen so far this season. And for a sophomore quarterback to be doing that, big for them. You know, we'll see more from them once they play against the tough teams in their league. But I do think they are a very capable team. That's what Allison said when she got to watch them, is like, watch out for Steel Canyon. They're really, really good this year. Point Loma, kind of figuring it out, new head coach this season, but 2-2 start, not bad. One of the star players that stands out to me is Romeo Carter on both sides of the ball. Great defensive back. He's off to a good start as a wide receiver as well. I do think it's probably a little bit too much for the Pointers going against this Steel Canyon team, especially the way Longerbone has these guys playing for Steel Canyon right now. Probably just a little bit too much. But I think this is another week where Steel shows that, hey, we are a legitimate contender this year.
I think the talent in the East County, you've got Granite, Mount Miguel, teams like that, Steel Canyon sort of can fly under the radar. But like you said, this is another week where they can show what they're going to do once we start getting into that league play, and I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some really good games this week. I know there are a couple teams on a bye. It's kind of that weird in between the league play weeks, so should be interesting. But I think the biggest thing is probably there's a lot of teams out there that not necessarily having the greatest years that now we're kind of dominate these times of the year with like the games of the week. So it's interesting for these other teams to step up and kind of get a shot. Another game I'd like to shout out is Valley Center versus Imperial. Valley Center is off to a great start. Imperial's, I believe, undefeated right now. So it's one of the last few undefeated teams going up to Valley Center. Should be an interesting one there. We'll definitely have all the highlights of that one as well. Didn't make game of the week, but should be a good matchup there as well.
Yeah, good to see it making it to the PPR.
Yeah, I know. Just to get out to Valley Center.
Yeah, just get to those faraway games is a feat in itself.
I know Chapman he's like, hey, I could go out there and get all those ones, and he does, and we thank him every time. But man, it's going to be cold out there as well, Mark Chapman. Please wear a jacket.
Wear the red jacket.
But that's going to do it for us this week, and we will see you guys on Friday night.
See you Friday.